Hey, friend. Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Over the last couple of weeks here on the channel for the month of February, we're talking about gear, and specifically gear that won't break the bank, but will give you immediate returns in terms of quality or integration with Logic or, just fun to use. And we've covered audio interfaces. We've covered USB controllers and my picks in these different categories. Today, I don't really want to necessarily give you a specific gear recommendation. Instead, I want to share with you some experiences that I've had over the last couple of months. And what we're going to talk about is arguably the most important part of your entire recording, producing, and mixing chain, and that is your studio monitors. And just as important, if not more important, the room that you're working in and how these two interact with each other. Probably just like you, I've owned my fair share of equipment and different monitors. I started out with KRK, Rockets way back in the day, and then I got a Fostex, little mono speaker that helped me out a lot. And then I went on to some Equator monitors. Equator no longer exists, but they were the D5s and they were coaxial monitors. And I was really keen on the coaxial experience. So I picked up some Presonus Scepters and also a Presonus Tembler, which is their subwoofer. And those served me well for quite a while. At a certain point, though, I decided I want to upgrade. I want to determine where does the line exist in terms of quality and how much do you got to pay for quality and where do you hit diminishing returns. And when I decided to upgrade, I spent a lot of time researching. I decided that I wanted to get a pair of Dynaudio Lid 48s. These are three-way monitors, and I'm a big fan of the Dynaudio stuff since having these Lid 48s. I've also spent a lot of time and energy trying to optimize the space itself. As you can see, there's a lot going on in here. And I've tried to optimize the placement of my speakers in my room, where I am in the room, where acoustic treatment is in the room. And I feel like that all of this effort has been worthwhile for my needs. And then the very kind folks at Adam Audio decided to send me a pair of their T8V monitors, which are really budget friendly and also offer a lot of bang for the buck. I mean, the woofers go down to 33 hertz. The tweeters go as high as 25K. And it was just a really cool opportunity for me to try out different monitors at different price points and see what it's all about. And the thing that I took away from all of my trial and error and comparing these different models is really, at the end of the day, where you put your monitors in the space that you're working is hands down the most liberating or limiting factor in your music production. So let me give you the rundown of how I experienced the Adam monitors exactly, because it was a journey. It wasn't a clear cut like one is obviously better than the other, because of how your speakers interact in your room really dictate how you're going to perceive them. When I first received the Adam monitors, I just really wanted to just quickly, A/B compare against my existing monitors, not spend a lot of time setting up, which, is doing a total disservice to the Adam monitors, but I placed them right on the desk here. You can see that they're on the stands now, the T8Vs, but I just placed them on the desk, just kind of towed them in a tiny bit, totally not in the best spot in the room. And I only know that because of this comparison that I did, but I placed them on the desk and then I just started listening to music via Apple Music and just A/Bing, just switching between the monitors using my ensemble from Apogee and just seeing how do these compare in relation to each other. And just obviously, if you can even just guess, the Adam sounded terrible because they were in the worst position in the room. They sounded thin. They sounded kind of phasey, empty. It didn't have that low end and mid-range solidity and that solidity in terms of the stereo imaging that the Dynaudios had. And that's because where the Dynaudios are sitting and now the Adam monitors are sitting, that is what I identified as the best place in my room. And who knows if it's even the best place still. It's just been months and over a year probably of trial and error and trying to improve things. From there, I knew it was a total disservice. So then I decided to try to place the Adams directly next to the Dynaudios. I'm not really eager to move my monitors quite yet. I want to go through this process of examining and comparing. So let me put them on the outside of the Dynaudios and see how they A/B. And again, it still really wasn't the best position. And it was clear when I would A/B switch between the sets of monitors, the Dynaudio sounded very solid in terms of imaging, low end, mid range, just sounded like locked in, where the Adams sounded kind of pulled apart. Like the center of the stereo image really struggling to be solid, sounded kind of phasey. Again, the low end was not that impressive. And I know it's got an 8-inch woofer, so it has low end for days. So again, I wasn't too impressed. From there, I decided, you know what? I'm going to place the Atoms on top of the Dynaudios, try to get them as close as I can to where my monitors are best in my room. So I placed them on top, and that was a startling difference in experience. So far the Atoms sounded, phasey, thin, lacking low end. When I placed them on top of the Dynaudio, still not the best place in the room because now they're like, a foot above where I would sit normally. But the low end and the mids just locked in, and the stereo imaging locked in. And it was like, oh, okay, these sound pretty sick, actually. At that point, finally, I decided, okay, I'm going to move the Dynaudios. I'm going to place the Atoms where the Dynaudios are, and let's hear how they sound. And at that point, it was like, yeah, like obviously, like that's where they need to sit. They sound great. They have great low end, great mid. They're a bit hyped in the top end, but I think it's because of Adam's tweeter that just, goes on and on forever past 20K. And at that point, I felt it was clear as day that where your monitors are sitting in your room really is going to make the biggest impact in how you perceive your monitors and how good they sound, and ultimately how good your music sounds and how it translates to other playback systems. The typical recommendations for monitor placement in a space, you probably have read it 100 times, but is number one, best to place your monitors on stands if you can help it, if you have the room or have the ability to, because it allows you a better opportunity to place the monitors in the space and the listening position within the space. Your monitors should make an equilateral triangle with the listening position and be kind of toed in, depending on what the manual for your monitor says, but generally they tend to be toed in. So you are right at the end of that triangle where your head is. Additionally, the tweeters should be pointed at your ears. They should be at the same level because high frequencies tend to be more directional than low frequencies. So you want those pointed right at your ears. Those are like the other ends of the triangle. You also want your monitors to be the same distance from the side walls and the back walls. So you don't want your left monitor to be, 2 inches away from the left wall, but your right monitor to be 1.5 feet from the right wall, because then sound bouncing around your room is not going to be equal. And it's going to distort what you think you're hearing when it comes to your music. And one piece of clutch information that I learned that is not often recommended, it's usually the opposite, is that in smaller spaces, you want to keep the monitors as close to the back wall as possible. And, it depends on, if there's a port rear facing on the monitor, like the T8Vs have a rear facing port, but generally you want to keep them as close to the back wall in a smaller space. Just because the further away from the back wall you move it, it creates more, collisions and peaks and nulls and just distortion in terms of what you hear. And that seemed to be reinforced in my own tests when I had the PreSonus Scepters and the Dynaudios, and I would test out, being as far away from the wall as possible or as close, and generally closer sounded better for my particular situation. Now, I'm not an acoustician. I don't play one on TV. I'm just offering up what I've learned through my own trial and error over the last year or so of trying to optimize my monitors and my space with different sets of monitors and comparing different sets of monitors. Let's now check out some analysis from SonarWorks' reference comparing these two different sets of monitors in the same exact place and see what SonarWorks had to do to correct each set of monitors for my space. What this software does is it takes about 30 to 40 different measurements around the listening position, and then it adjusts the EQ of your monitors to be better fit to the room itself. I find it very helpful. So I went through the process of tuning the Dynaudios, and then when the Atoms arrived, I tuned those. And if we take a look at the graphs, it's actually pretty interesting how much they don't differ. They do differ, but not a whole lot. And if you take a look at the low end, right below 100 hertz, there's a boost, there's a pretty significant boost, and then there is a cut as well, or a null that occurs. And this is something I have been fighting since before either of these sets. When I had the PreSonus monitors, I was still trying to work through that low end junk that was going on. And it maintained and persevered through two other sets of monitors. So it's clear as day to me, since both exhibit the same behavior, that this is an issue with my room itself. And there's a really amazing Sound on Sound article with famed acoustician Carl Tatz that really is a fantastic article that points out that this is a problem in every single room and is actually an argument for subwoofers, but I digress. I'll include the link in the description so you can check it out. But that was pretty clear to me. It existed for either set, so that's not that much different. Looking at the mid-range, there's slight differences. And then looking at the upper end of the spectrum, I found that the Atoms tend to slope up a bit more. And it could just be the placement of the monitors because the Atoms are two-way speakers. The tweeters sit on top. The Dynaudios are three-way speakers, and they're meant to be landscape, so the tweeters don't sit at the same position. So maybe it would be identical. I don't know if I adjusted the orientation of either set. But really, at the end of the day, they're both pretty similar in this space. So the point of today's video is not to recommend monitor X, Y, or Z, but really, hopefully, to get you to consider adjusting the orientation or optimizing the orientation of your monitors in your space. And we all don't have the budget or the time or the ability to invest in expensive monitors or room treatment or anything else. But really, there are such huge gains to be made just by following some really often recommended practices for placing your monitors in your room. And in fact, I personally have learned a ton from the Adam Audio YouTube channel. I've actually referred to it a lot for acoustics because they've had some fantastic videos where they interview acousticians, producers, mix engineers, and it's been a tremendous help to me in my journey. And that's helped me to be better informed in terms of monitoring in general. So I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, as always, I highly recommend subscribing to the YouTube channel, WhyLogic Pro Rules, or subscribing on the website itself, WhyLogicProRules.com. Every week I'm posting new videos, new emails, and posts to help you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Thanks so much.